I started as an individual contributor, as a software evangelist, and then I managed the evangelism team, and then I managed all the things that interacted with developers, which meant documentation and tech support, as well as evangelism. Yeah. And then I got the Apple labeled software because Apple was making software for Macintosh. I think I ran out, I don't know, 75 people organization in Apple.
All right, you're listening to Hawk Talk. I'm here today with Guy Kawasaki. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So I assume the day you're born, you get in there and you're like, hey, I just need to make the whole world love technology. And from day one, you were just talking about whether it was the machines in the medical room, in the delivery room, you just had to make sure that the world understood this, right? Just that's where you were born.
I hate to disappoint you, but you're completely wrong.
It's always just fun to start there just because, people have this assumption that everyone's just born with what they end up doing and like, oh, they were probably just started out that way. And it's like, that's not how this works at all. So let's take it back.
I'm living proof to random events, being in the right place at the right time, dog shit luckiness. It's like, I hate to burst your bubble.
That's how it works though. So let's take it back. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii. I come from a lower middle class part of Hawaii, lower middle class family. I didn't know we were poor until I came to the mainland.
And listen, there's a blessing in that. Like I've taught school in India and spent time around the world. And like, you realize that like, it's only comparison that, what do they say? Comparison's the thief of joy. Like, if you don't know what you don't have, then it's actually usually okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about the extreme of that, but yeah, generally speaking, I can't tell you I have this great story of how I overcame this crippling, poverty and, all this kind of oppression and stuff. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't, I had all the clothes. Well, of course, in Hawaii, you don't need that much clothes.
Yeah. You had shelter, you had food.
Yeah, nice and warm, had all the food, loving parents,
Yeah.
I don't have one of those kind of made for TVs, stories.
And I think, some people it works for, but I think avoiding a made for TV story is also okay too. And so growing up, tell me more, like what did your parents do?
My father he worked for the fire department, and then he became a real estate broker. And then he had a real deep passion for helping people. So he became a state senator in Hawaii. Oh, wow. My mother all this time was basically raising us and being a mom.
Nice. And so early on, everybody has that as a kid. I want to be this when I grow up. Like, did you want to be a senator when you grew up, or like,
no. I think I fell in love with entrepreneurship. I wanted to, I was hearing the stories of Silicon Valley, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And really, what opened my eyes was I left Hawaii to go to college. So I didn't spend, more than, let's see, about 18 years of my life in Hawaii. Yeah. And I came to Stanford in California. And when I came to California, it was like the scales were removed from my eyes. I mean, it was like, oh, these houses here, these companies here, these cars here, these blondes here. I mean, this was it.
That makes sense. And so, and you said you were like, when you say you were, fascinated with the stories of Silicon Valley, was this like while you were in middle school, high school, you were getting into it, or was it post?
Yeah, I think it was, I got to be careful about the chronology here because I don't want to tell you I was reading about companies that didn't exist.
Oh, yeah. But just ask the audience to like have a little grace here. But I am curious, like even if it's a false memory, what kind of things you were reading? I am curious.
Yeah. So I was in high school from, I graduated from high school in 72. So any tech company before 72 is probably was Intel.
Yeah, HP, IBM, I think were before then too, right?
Yeah. Atari, probably.
Yeah.
I don't think Apple was 76, so that was, that was before Apple. But I mean, if you were born and raised in Hawaii, your sort of perspective was, I can be very successful. I can be a hotel manager. I can work at Alum Center as a store manager. I could work, picking pineapples or sugarcane. But nobody was thinking like I could build Hewlett Packard, I could build Intel, I could build National Semiconductor.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, what do you think drew you towards that? Like as a kid, why were you drawn towards that? Because I assume a lot of the kids you grew up with just stayed and worked at Alamo and picked pineapples.
I don't. You know how when you talk to successful people and they say, "Yeah, I wanted to change the world. I wanted everybody to have clean water, good education, economic independence and all that. And, all these wonderful sort of beauty contests. What motivates you? Contestant one. Well, let me tell you the truth for me. So when I was in high school, some family friend gave me a ride in a Porsche 911, and I got out of that car and I said, man, Guy, this is why you need to study and this is why you need to work your ass off.
I love that.
And then twice in high school, I was catching the bus to school across town.
Yeah.
And twice in high school, I got hijacked on the bus, and some, big guy shook me down for my money. So I also said to myself, Guy, you got to study, you got to work hard so you don't have to catch the bus and you don't get robbed on the bus. So I will tell you that my motivation was not so much change the world as change the car.
I think if most people are honest, that's probably most people's motivation is their own circumstances, whether it's to, again, achieve things that you've been exposed to or to get away from things that you've been exposed to. I think that's probably the most intrinsic
and
motivation.
Mine was both. That's why I've been highly motivated.
Yeah, I love it. And so you come to California. Where'd you go to school again? Where was it?
I went to school at Stanford for college.
Right. Yeah. And what did you study?
This is another great story. So this is, 1972, 73, 74. And back then, if you were Asian American, your father and mother wanted you to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a dentist. So I took this like pre-med course where you walk around the Stanford hospital on rounds with a doctor. And I fainted on the first day. So I figured, medicine isn't for me. And then I don't know where I read it, but probably Inc. magazine or something. But I read that dentists have the highest level of suicide of any profession. So I said, okay, that takes out dentistry. And my father, because he was a state senator, he wanted me to, get a law degree because that's what he did as a state senator. So I went to law school, but I went to law school for 2 weeks and I quit because I just couldn't stand it. It was too much pressure. And it's one of the only times in my life I ever quit something. So far I'm telling you, my motivation was flawed and shallow, and my career choices were bad. You're probably saying, why am I having you on my show, Guy?
No, not at all. I love this because, again, it's back to the assumptions people make about how people are successful. And like, there's college kids that listen to this that are like, oh God, I got to get all my stuff together and I got to be buttoned up. And and it's like, no.
Let me tell you, that's total bullshit. If I was in college today, to the people in college today, you're going to be like healthy and, wise and stuff. And you probably could work until you're 90. Okay. I mean, somebody who's only 20 today. And so between, 20 and 90 is 70 freaking years, man. You don't need to be in any great rush. And I also think that the world used to be, you graduate from college, you get a job, you spend the next 50 years at it. They give you a gold watch and you retire. But that's not how it is anymore, right? So if you stay 1 or 2 years in a job, that's long term already. So I think I would make the case that you could almost make no mistake with your first few jobs because if you, okay, let's take a very bad case. I'll take the worst case you can imagine, right? So
Yep.
let's say you, excuse me, let's say that you graduate from college and you go to work for Theranos and you think, my God, I picked the right company. This is company that's going to take a drop of blood and diagnose everything wrong. And, it's got all these secretaries of states and famous venture capitalists on the board, and our CEOs on the cover of Fortune and Forbes and Wall Street Journal. I could not have done something better than work for Theranos. Well, oops, now the two people who led Theranos are in jail. The whole thing was bullshit. And so now you think, oh my God, my career's over. I went to work for Theranos. But I could make the case that you would learn more from working for a Theranos than if you happened to go to a company that became a smashing success.
Yep.
Because at Theranos, you would learn all the things that people can do wrong. At a smashing success tech company, it'll be very hard for you to separate correlation from causation.
Yep.
So you think that because you went to Google, you made Google successful. Maybe you just got on a tsunami and you rode the tsunami. You had nothing to do with it. So I'm not telling you to go intentionally find a company that's led by people who are going to serve prison time. But I'm telling you, I could build a case that you could almost do anything out of college. And you'll look back and said, I learned something. If it failed, you can learn something if it succeeded too. Don't get me wrong. But I would chillax about that. And
I also think if you go in the lens of, I'm going to pursue things I learn in, I speak at a lot of colleges, and this is thankfully, I don't know where I got this advice, but I took it on myself. From 18 to 30, my goal in my mind was, am I learning something? And am I progressing myself? And, I don't have to, but I can live on minimum wage right now. So, meaning in my 20s, like I don't have any responsibilities. No one else is relying on me. I have no mortgage. Like I'm just going to focus on learning everything I can.
The irony is going to be that when you're 70 like me, you're going to look back and say, 18 to 30, that was the happiest time of my life.
Oh, yeah, right. There is something to be said there. The good news is I've got a couple kids now that this is probably the happiest time of my life, but 38. But it's
yes, you don't know it.
Yeah.
It is definitely the happiest time of your life.
Yeah. But so from there, like in college, so what did you end up doing after 2 weeks in law school? Did you drop out?
Yes, so I dropped out of law school. I returned to Hawaii, and I worked for the lieutenant governor's office in Hawaii. The following year, I entered an MBA program at UCLA, which is because I wanted to be in business. And back then, you got an MBA if you wanted to be in business.
Did you already have your undergrad degree?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Oh, what was that in?
Yeah. That's another great story.
Let's hear it. Yeah.
So, having fainted in the medical center and decided I didn't want to commit suicide and be a dentist, I looked for the easiest major I could find at Stanford, and the easiest major at Stanford at the time was psychology. So I am a proud psychology major of Stanford University.
There it is. Beautiful. And then, so then you go back to your MBA at UCLA.
Yeah. And that was it was a very good experience. But ironically, one of the best reasons why it was a good experience is because the UCLA MBA program was a 4-day-a-week program. Fridays were always off. I don't know, because you're going to use that
students, you got to party on Thursdays.
Exactly. Yeah. So I had 3-day weekend every weekend.
Yep.
And as I said, I didn't come from a rich family. So I took a part-time job working for, of all things, a jewelry manufacturer in downtown LA. And I got this job because of a girl that I met who was also from Hawaii. So I literally had a part-time job counting diamonds. Now, after I graduated from the MBA, when my friends were going to Accenture and JP Morgan and Bank of America and Wells Fargo, I went to a small family-owned jewelry manufacturer in downtown LA. So you were saying, Guy, it's not exactly an optimal career choice, but I tell you why it was, because I went into the jewelry manufacturing business and we sold to jewelry retailers, not to the end consumer, but the retailer. And I learned how to sell because the jewelry business is a very tough business. It's hand-to-hand combat. So I really learned how to sell and make sales calls and stuff like that, which has been so useful for the rest of my career. I mean, I've come down to believe that you're either making it or you're selling it. That's the only two essential functions in life.
I was taught that and like 18 years old, and went and worked for Cutco, the knife company, and did door-to-door knife sales because I wanted to learn, because everyone told me it was so important.
You worked for Cutco?
I did.
Wow.
Broke a bunch of their records, had a blast. What's crazy is that was 19 years ago now. So.
Well, the skills you learned at Cutco, you probably are using to this day, right?
100%. And my business partner here at Hawk, also, he ran the whole Southwest for Cutco, I believe. So we both have like a pretty strong DNA with Cutco and that door-to-door knife selling, and just the way they built training programs and onboarded people and their hiring and recruiting processes. Like it's a multi-billion-dollar kitchen knife company. Like it's impressive.
My wife out of college worked for Procter and Gamble. So she got really great, consumer training, not consumer, but training about, she had to call on markets and stuff and, make sure they got bold and tied and all that kind of stuff. And that kind of experience, I mean, I bet at the time that I graduated, you graduated, my wife graduated, some of our friends were going to McKinsey and Goldman Sachs and, New York investment banks. And we thought, oh yeah, they're the hot shit people, right? And
well, I graduated in 2008. So it was even like the most ridiculous part, because all my friends that did that, they all had their jobs retracted by the time they got there.
Really?
Yeah.
So what did they end up doing?
I mean, I had one of my closest friends had a banking job in Texas, I went to Arizona, University of Arizona. He moved to Texas, got the job retracted, spent a couple years, I think, in recruiting, just because it was the only job that was hiring, was like a recruiting, commission only job. Did okay. Then went and worked with his brother in truck dispatching in Chicago. And then finally, full circle, moved to LA. I think he worked in dispatching still for a little bit, and then transferred into lending, and ended up, now he's got his own lending business and has done really well. But, this is, how long has it been? It's been, 17 years since we got out of college, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So.
Well, so, this concept that you go to the right college, you go to Ivy League school and you go to McKinsey or Goldman Sachs and you go to New York and, life is perfect is a flawed concept.
Yeah. And listen, I will say, there are specific people I know that have done incredibly well on that path, but there's a ton of people I know that didn't turn into anything, or people that frankly never move above that. So they end up like, McKinsey's a great place to work, Bain, all these consultancies. But what happens is, if you get stuck in that, you make good money the rest of your life, but it's really hard to leave because it's hard to ever get paid what they pay there. But then the upside isn't there. It's this interesting conundrum that, again, it's some of the top achievers in our country end up at these places.
And the people who succeeded in that path, would you say that they're good and happy people today?
Some. I mean, I feel like most of the senior people at some of these consultancies that have been there a long time are always looking to get out, but don't seem to be able to find a way out. That I see that a lot. Yeah. They're paid a little too well that they can't find something to replace that, and they've built a lifestyle around it, but they can't go after that next upside. You make it to a senior level in those companies, you're a very high achiever and a very hard worker, and you may not be, even though you're making great money, you the risk reward side, like you haven't had the opportunity to take maybe a little more risk and get the reward that really can come from someone that works like that. That's what I've seen. But again, some people that are good. So, all right, jewelry dealing. How did that lead to tech?
Another great story. So, listen, looking backwards, I could invent the bullshit story that, I knew exactly what I was going to do. So I majored in psychology, and then I went into jewelry manufacturing to learn how to sell. So eventually I could work for Apple in tech. but
Totally
that
makes
would
sense. Yeah.
be a total bullshit story because you cannot connect the dots
No.
from
Well, I think that's
psychology to Apple.
when
Okay.
it's I think Steve Jobs, one of his more famous quotes is you can connect the dots looking backwards.
Exactly. I can connect the dots looking backward, but looking forward, you would have never said, "Oh, Guy, you want to end up in tech, so you should start in psychology and
Yeah.
then schlep diamonds." I mean, that's not a real path. So anyway, so when I was at Stanford, we're going to go back to cars again. So I
I like
love
it.
cars. To this
Yeah.
day, I
Me
love
too, by the way.
cars.
I'm a car lover too, so I get it.
So I met a guy at Stanford who also loved cars. The difference between the two of us was that he was from a very wealthy family. So he loved cars and he
Yeah.
had cars. I loved cars and didn't have cars. So anyway, we became very good friends. I remember once I went to his house for like Thanksgiving and his father picks us up in a Rolls Royce and like, holy shit, this is a freaking Rolls Royce. And then we go out to dinner and his mom asked me to drive her home in her car and it's a Ferrari Daytona. And I said, again, Guy, this is why you need to study at Stanford so you can buy a Daytona.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this guy became my best friend. And years later, he was working in the Macintosh division. So he hired me to work for him to be the second software evangelist in the Macintosh division. And
And
the
what did that
only
mean? What is a
reason why I
software
got that
evangelist?
job, quite
Yeah.
frankly, is nepotism.
But like to put a pin in that, like welcome to reality. You can
Yeah.
people complain about it, but like go like, and this is someone you stayed in touch with. Like, let's not take away the fact that you made a friend, so you were likable. You stayed in touch with that friend, and you found an opportunity where that friend needed something that you could serve, and you were able to leverage that. Like that is not a bad thing. It's it's something that I find crazy with a lot of people. Like my social post for the day is about like nobody's self-made. Like nepotism on all levels is what happens. Like, why do we get hired at companies? On the so Hawk is a marketing agency. Like, why do people hire us? Because they like us. Because we've made friends. Because someone that likes me told them that they should hire us. Like that is how a lot of this happens. Normal.
It's not because your resume passed some
Yeah.
AI test.
No. God no. I mean, I've had many resumes that look great, and then I interview the person. I'm like, nope. And then someone calls me and goes, that person's a rock star. You should talk to him. I'm like, oh, interesting. Like that goes so much further because it's so hard to figure that out. And again, that's what I try to even explain this again, speaking at college and stuff. Like, go meet a lot of people because companies have just as hard a time hiring people as you do finding a job. It's hard to find great people. And so getting those check boxes of like, they're friends with an employee or someone knows them that at least they're like some level of normal goes a long way.
One day when I was researching for a book of mine, I decided to look at every job I've ever had in my life. Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I've had a dozen or so. And only one was kind of, I saw an ad and I applied for it and I got it. Everything else was nepotism.
Yeah.
Everything.
Cutco was me signing up for an ad. And the only job I didn't get that I applied for was Claim Jumper, the restaurant in Tucson, trying to be a busboy. And I think I talked so far past them. I was already motivated to like start businesses and do this stuff. So I tried to dazzle them with all my ambition. And looking in hindsight, I'm talking to like an assistant manager at a Claim Jumper about how I want to build businesses. And the guy's like, who are you? Like, you're not going to be a busboy here.
You peaked too early.
Yeah, right. So explain what is a software evangelist? What is that role?
Well, evangelism comes from a Greek word meaning bringing the good news. So, what I did as a software evangelist was we brought the good news of Macintosh, how we would enable people to use a new kind of computer, be more creative and productive, and it would enable developers to create the software they ever wanted to create. So Macintosh was good news. So our job was to convince software companies and hardware companies to create Macintosh products. Now, back then, Macintosh was just, it was a rumor. I mean, it wasn't proven. It had no install base. It doesn't have a lot of good tools. So it was definitely a sell job to get people to write software for something that, might not exist.
Yep. Got it. And so it was like a sales and marketing role to like really get it out there and proliferate it.
I mean, I think
Fair?
evangelism is basically the purest form of sales and marketing, but it
Yeah.
is a form of sales and
Yeah.
marketing.
I love it. And so why did your friend just knew that you knew sales and you knew psychology? So this would be a great fit for you. Like
I,
obviously a friend's not just going to hire you under him unless he feels it's also a good fit
but
for you.
yeah, I mean, he knew more people than me. He only called me, but
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I guess he saw. Maybe I should ask him why, but I guess he saw that I could sell. Right. I mean,
Yep.
and it's at some level when you're trying to get a company to write software for your platform, you are selling them on the platform. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And so tell me what happened next. You end up at the Macintosh division at Apple. How was that? How was that jumping in there?
that was, that was like going to Disneyland to go to work every day. And I mean, it was just amazing working for Steve Jobs. And, a lot of people, they see these stories about how he was an asshole and, and all that. And don't get me wrong, there's some accuracy to that. But we were so motivated. He had us convinced that we were going to change the world and bring out a new computer that was the best thing ever. It was truly a religious experience.
Yeah.
It was a cult. I mean, it was a cult.
So how was it a cult? And people always say that, but I actually love, and I think it can be a good thing.
We weren't drinking Kool-Aid, but we definitely believed that we were not just schlepping some collection of metal and rubber and silicon and glass. The Macintosh represented more than just another personal computer.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fair. And so how did that manifest? Like when people felt it was a cult versus like, again, you've worked in other jobs, you've seen a lot of other companies. Like what did that cult, did that just mean that people were just had full conviction in what they were doing? Or
we definitely had, I mean, it was the it's tricky to use these kind of words today because evangelists is often confused with evangelical, and cult is often confused with people who are, committing mass suicide and stuff like this. But we truly, truly believe that Macintosh was going to make the world a better place. So it was not, it was not like we're just selling a better toaster or something. I mean, although maybe toasters can make the world a better place, but we truly believe we were going to make the world a better place.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I think you did. So how did it progress? You come in under your friend, you start working as evangelist. Like, were you immediately Steve Jobs' best friend, and then just went from there?
No, not at all. Not at all. So we spent a couple years evangelizing Macintosh. Apple hit the wall for a while. Steve was fired. A lot of interesting things happened. But I guess,
did you ride that through? What was the guys that came? He came from Pepsi, right? The guy that came.
Yeah, John Scully came from Pepsi because there was a vision that computers were not going to be just for nerds and weenies. It was going to be like a consumer product, just like a soda water. Right? And I don't know if it's gone that far, but the computers are pretty much mainstream today, right? It's not a like.
And I don't think there's
a niche.
There's not many people that don't have a computer in the
US. Yeah. And so we went out and we convinced these companies, and it took a few years, but finally there was software, and then iPhone, iPod, iPad, all that other stuff happened.
Yeah. And what were you like? You obviously did more than Macintosh. Like, how did you move around the company?
I mean, back then when I started, the company was Apple II, Macintosh, and peripherals. Yeah. So I was purely Macintosh.
Right. No, I get that. But as it progressed, like, where did you go from there?
I started as an individual contributor, as a software evangelist. and then I manage the evangelism team, and then I manage all the things that interacted with developers, which meant documentation and tech support, and as well as evangelism.
Yeah.
And then I got the Apple labeled software because Apple was making software for Macintosh. So yeah, I think I ran out, I don't know, 75 people organization in Apple.
Cool. And what was your sort of day to day as an evangelist? Like, what does that look like? What were you like Monday through Friday? What were you kind of doing?
Well, Monday through Friday, you were out there convincing companies to write Mac software. I mean, it was outward bound. It was, it was hand to hand combat. You got your Macintosh, and back then, there wasn't any social media, or there wasn't any things like this where we're doing, real time conferencing. So they either came to you or you went to them, and you did demos, and you you did whatever. I mean, it was like, I wouldn't say it's exactly the same as schlepping jewelry, but it's a lot closer to schlepping jewelry than Zoom calls.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I feel like that is how most people built businesses up until really social media proliferated.
It was hand to hand combat.
And so how long were you there until?
I worked at Apple from 83 to 87, and then 95 to 97. And then, I started some software companies. I started a VC fund. I did a bunch of things. And then eventually, about 11 years ago, I went to work for Canva. And Canva is another great story, right? Because Canva is also evangelism, because Canva, where Macintosh was going to increase people's creativity and productivity, Canva was democratizing design so that anybody could be a better communicator with design, because Canva made it infinitely cheaper and easier to do great designs than Adobe's Photoshop and Illustrator.
And you joined them early, right?
Yeah, pretty early. I mean, I've been 11 years. I think there were maybe, I don't know, 20 people when I joined.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just love that that was the move they made at 20 people. Like, we need Guy and we need the evangelism coming here. Like, you don't see people have the vision to spend on something like that generally. Like, it's not that common of a role, especially in smaller companies.
No, I think that I've helped legitimize the kind of attractiveness and appropriateness to use a position like an evangelist. I mean, there was Jesus before us, but there was a 2,000-year gap. But so it takes a special kind of company and product to do evangelism, because you gotta believe in your heart that you're making people's lives better. Whereas sales, you can be thinking about your quota, your bonus, and all that. But with evangelism, you got to think of the other person too, and maybe not even just two, but also primarily the other person. So I can tell you, when I tell people to use Canva or Macintosh, yes, it is good for me, but I'm telling you, I truly do believe that it was good for them to use a Macintosh and to use Canva today.
And that's how you build those relationships too. You're not signing up for anything wrong. And so you also, through this process, started writing books and sort of putting yourself out there too, correct?
Yeah, that again, nothing was planned. I wrote a book in 1987 called The Macintosh Way, which explained, what the philosophies of the Macintosh division. And when I wrote that book in 1987, I said, okay, this is it, Guy. You're, flash in a pan. You got one book in you. And I've said that this is my last book about 17 times now. So I happen to find more projects along the way. I fall in love when I write a book. Like right now, I am writing a book about how to use Signal, because I think Signal is such a big deal.
Not how our government's using it, right?
Well, listen, Eric.
It's just timely. It seems like
no, but okay, I'll solicit some feedback for you. I am considering calling this book For Pete's Sake.
I mean, the problem is it'll be great for the next year, and then no one will know what you're talking about. But it would land really well this year for sure. That's great. Yeah, no, it's funny. I love that you say I never write a book again every time. Like I have a best-selling marketing book, and everyone's like, "When's the next one?" I'm like, "Never," but I know that it's probably going to happen.
Yeah, writing a book is a beautiful feeling.
Honestly, I love writing it. It's the work that goes into getting it out there that I didn't enjoy as much because I have enough work to do.
Yeah, but I mean, for the people listening, if you think that you can live a life where you love doing what you're good at and you can be successful without a lot of effort, I hate to burst your bubble. So, I have this podcast called Remarkable People, and I interview obviously remarkable people. And one was Mark Maron. He wrote the book about, about giving a FU, and he told me, Guy, you know what?
Oh, the one subtle art of not giving a F.
Yeah,
that one?
Yeah. And he told me, Guy, you know that you have found something you love or your passion when it involves shit sandwiches, but you love the shit sandwich. Yep. So, like podcasting, what we're doing is like this, right? So if you love podcasting, but from the outside looking in, if people understood there's a lot of shit sandwiches in podcasting with prepping and editing and all that, it's not just all glory. But, for me, I love the prep. I love the editing. So when you love a shit sandwich, you're on the way to finding your passion.
Yeah, it's funny. Your podcast and my podcast have a lot of the same ethos and guests. Like we both had Jane Goodall, both had Andrew Yang. Like it's fun, but yeah, I mean, it's the same idea. Like remarkable people, top performers. How do they get to where they are? Is mine and how I look at it. So, but as you said, if it's rewarding, the shit sandwich is worth it, and that's really where you can find that.
I might even go further. I would say not only if the shit sandwich is rewarding, but if you truly enjoy what you're doing, the shit sandwich doesn't taste like shit.
Yeah, that's fair.
It tastes like ribeye or prime rib or lobster or salmon.
My dad was in the waste business, and he used to tour people around their facilities and be like, "God, it smells awful in here." He goes, "It smells like money to me." Like it's his favorite line. Like it's right in line with that. So I agree. So a few more questions for you. I guess number one, what's next? You've got these books, you got the podcast, you're still working with Canva. Like what's on the docket for you?
I've been asked this many times in my career, starting at about, 25. And I don't know then, I don't know now. I am now close to 71. So, I might say what's next is death, but I just keep writing, and I just fall in love with stuff as they come across my radar, and I can't predict. I never had a plan, and I don't see why I should change that winning system.
Yeah, it's fair. And I think that's, honestly, there's some peace in that, like not worrying about the future, just living in the moment.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've been very lucky with Apple, and very, very, very lucky with Canva. So I have the wherewithal to kind of be a gunslinger and play it loose. But
it's great though.
It's not like I'm a single parent with 4 kids working 3 jobs. I mean, let's not paint the picture that's not accurate here.
I get it. And so, last question for someone else that wants to achieve at a high level, what's some advice you either wish you got or did get that really helped you get to this point?
I would say that, and I have a book called Think Remarkable where I kind of outline this process, but the first thing is you got to have a growth mindset. So a growth mindset means that you believe you can learn new things and do new things and try new things. A fixed mindset means you believe that you cannot do that and you don't want to take risks. So step one is a growth mindset. The flip side of a growth mindset is a grit mindset. Because if you are trying new things, you are going to face failure and you are going to get hurt. So you have to have this perseverance that you're going to push through the failures, because nothing worth doing is going to be easy.
Yep.
And so I would just encourage you to, like, pursue what interests you. Don't try to find your quote passion, because that's too high a bar. Just find these things that interest you. It could be podcasting, it could be writing, it could be programming, whatever interests you, try it. You might love it, you might not, but keep collecting data, especially when you're young. Your job is to gather data. Yep. It's not to find this perfect, path that you know exactly what's going to happen. That is a myth. So just pursue your interests. Hopefully it becomes a passion. You start loving the shit sandwiches, and then just keep at it.
Yep.
I truly do believe this concept that 90% of success is keeping on showing up, because most people do not keep showing up.
Agreed. That is something you learn as you get older. You watch, like, so many people just don't stick with it, don't show up. And I've coached a lot of kids on, by being someone that works hard and shows up, you've already separated yourself from 90% of people. And that's it's competitive out there, but your competition isn't very difficult. Yeah. Love it. Well, Guy, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on Hawk Talk.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here. And, I hope we can interact some more. And, do you use Signal?
I do.
Okay. So that's good. That's good.
Perfect. Have they hired you yet?
No, well, I'm going to be a voluntary evangelist for Signal, because as we go through what we're going through, I think one of the most essential things is secure communications. Right? So Signal is it. It has end-to-end encryption, and it encrypts your metadata, which is, for people who are listening to this and wondering what the hell I just said, the bottom line is Signal is the most secure way you can message. And that is a very important thing.
Agreed. Well, again, thank you, Guy.
All right. Thank you very much. All the best to you. And, you take care.